Guys, it does occur to me that the last few times we've done these broadcast roundtables, it's been with some positive things to talk about after a few wins. That is not the case this time. Flyers mired in an 0-7-3 skid, and we're going to talk about both the good and the bad on our latest Broadcasters Roundtable. Tim Saunders with Jim Jackson, Steve Coates, and Jason Mertitas. You don't talk about injuries. It's an excuse. Everybody's dealing with it. But can we just recognize the obvious? You take what could potentially be the top two lines off of any hockey club, and there's going to be pain. And for this club, right now, it's excruciating.
I think so. I mean, the good start we recognized was with a paper-thin margin for error. Carter Hart was erasing a lot of mistakes. And they, weren't going to score a ton of goals, I didn't think, given the forward group healthy. So when you take the best forward so far, Travis Konechny, Scott Lawton, no Couturier or Atkinson from the start of the year, and then throw in James Van Riemsdyk, Wade Allison, I mean, that's a lot for any team. So excuses are for losers, but it's also a fact. That definitely has had something to do with the skid. And what part of the game does the top-level talent show up the most? Special teams, and the special teams right now are back to where we were last year. The Flyers, I did some unofficial, this is unofficial, but they have been outscored during the winless streak on non-5-on-5 play 20-2. So that's 3-on-3. That's pulled goalie. It's special teams. But at 5-on-5, they're just 24-18. Not great, but certainly not 0-7-3 worthy. So the special teams have really let them down. The power play is not producing, and the penalty kill. That's where I don't know as if you can use the front end talent excuse as much. Although they were using Travis Konechny and Scott Lawton and some of these guys on the penalty kill, but that's more effort. That is goaltending for sure. The goaltending's gone from otherworldly to just good. So everything's kind of gone the other way. But yeah, injuries, there's no question about it. I mean, every time I do a show, I feel like I'm being a shill by saying it's injuries, because we've been saying it for 2.5 years, really. But it is a fact of life. I mean, you take away, we look at the teams, we look at the rosters that the Flyers are playing. They might be missing 2-3 guys, most of them. There's been a couple teams, Columbus, that's been ravaged. But for the most part, these teams are missing 2-3 guys. The Flyers list is long, and it's key players.
I agree with everything. You covered everything just so well there. And it is a reality, though, about sitting here and saying you're missing 6 forwards, not fourth-line forwards, right. 6 forwards that your top-flight players. And you just can't survive. You can't take any sport. I don't care what sport you're talking about, where you take 30% of the roster and the top end of the roster and try to be competitive is really tough. That's the bad news. You got to try to look at a little bit good news, that all the guys that would normally not be here, and that would total 6, would be in the Phantoms right now, are getting unbelievable experience that they would have never got. So your depth becomes, when it finally does come into fruition, when it is at end of December, beginning of January, then things should start to change, and then you'll have the backup with these guys that have already been here.
Some of those guys haven't taken advantage of it as well as others.
Right.
So everybody's a little different there.
That's absolutely, and that's why the guys that are given the advantage or the opportunity right now, they're given it. I mean, he's been great letting the young kids go out, guys that just work hard to go out and play at the power play. That's fabulous. Does it work? No, it's not working right now because you just don't have the people that can be effective. Look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. My goodness, the 4 centers that they got. Then when you just finish with the Pittsburgh Penguins, you go and you play the 4 centers of the New York Islanders. It's unbelievable how strong they are up in the middle. And we're not even playing the number 1 center that we have. He's playing him on the wing right now. That just shows you the difference in depth and the difference in skill level that you run into right now, having so many injuries. And it's unbelievable the type of, as long as I've been in this business, I've never seen so many debilitating injuries for extended period of time. Not just like a pulled groin, you're out a couple of weeks. No. Surgeries and hips and backs. Never seen anything like it.
On incidental plays, too, like how Konechny goes down. He just collides with a guy as he's exiting the zone. I think the other thing, too, that JJ talked about was not having those guys. Those are all guys that are going to be on the ice in really key situations in a third period in a close game. And I think that's been another area where it's obviously hurt because, you have younger guys, and when you have guys that maybe would be developing in the AHL, you see them make mistakes, and I see it on social media. Fans see it and they go, "How is that guy making that play?" Well, when you're playing in a league that's a little big for you at the time, the first thing that goes is your decision making because you're rushed, and you'll put a puck into the middle of the ice when maybe you wouldn't have done that at the level that maybe is more appropriate at this time. But like Coatsy said, this is trial by fire, and I always think it's important for players to get experience at the highest level, because when they're not here, they can go back and they know what it feels like, the spatial awareness of playing in the best league in the world. So I think ultimately it can be beneficial. That's hard to feel right now, as they're mired in an 0-7-3 10-game winless skid. But, we have a rational brain and we have an emotional brain, and fans do as well. And after a loss,
I don't have that.
but
A little heavier on one than the other.
But go ahead.
some use it to different percentages. But you have that rational brain. And I think everybody recognizes when you're missing 5 of your top 6 forwards, and Wade Allison's a guy that played in the top 6 this year, that by my calculations, it's about 115 goals in a season that they're missing for a team that would have struggled to score at a high-end level to begin with. Yeah. So your rational brain tells you that, but the emotion of a 10-game winless skid, and after the last couple of years with, a couple of those as well, the emotion of that's still very raw. And I think that's where we're all kind of sitting right now.
The last roundtable, the production guys termed it the Torts effect, which I guess we talked most about last time. The Torts effect this year, I think, so far has been more about effort level. And the effort level has absolutely been there. It sounds ridiculous to say that during this 10-game skid, there are times they've played better than when they were actually winning. The one exception might be the Pittsburgh game. I didn't think the compete level was very good that night.
As a team, they were collectively poor.
But beyond that, other
no,
than
no,
the
no,
one game,
no, no.
you
Well,
can't argue with based on what he's got to use.
The Torts effect, everybody in that room now understands what you have to do to be successful. But at a certain time, and this is the time that you're struggling. If your goalie isn't like Carter Hart was at the beginning, at his top of his game, same thing with a guy named Samstrom, then you're going to have a hard time. You've got to be able to go out and score in the power play, prevent goals. Your power play and your skill level in that area, your special teams is killing this team right now, and that's because they're missing those guys. Not an excuse, but Torts, can you imagine if you didn't have a John Tortorella coaching right now to be able to provide that attitude, to be able to go out and play and have a good work ethic? Because quite honestly, doing the games, you see they just had scored again. Last year, you go, they got scored on. We're done. Might as well just go home. Now you feel like they've got a chance. Yep. And that's what you're talking about, the Torts effect. And I think in the long run, we hate 10-game losing streaks. Really do. But we're suffering because of that. And I think that as soon as we can get some people back, you'll see things starting to change and people can start feel better about it. That's what I'm counting on. I'm looking at it half full right now.
Well, Torts said before the losing streak started, was already trying to prepare us because we were all getting excited about the wins and losses. Just look at the last roundtable. We were all excited. And he was kind of, if you remember, saying, listen, look at the games. We're still getting outplayed. And so he saw, I don't know if he saw 0-7-3 coming, but he saw the record turning a bit and the results going in the other direction some. He didn't see all the injuries, so that's made it maybe accelerate. But I do think it's always has been for John Tortorella, but even more for us now. This is a season of seeing who is going to be with this team moving forward. And you're getting to see some of the young players, as you pointed out, and a guy like Owen Tippett showing you that he's a guy you might be able to build around, and Noah Cates certainly has some great tendencies. And you're seeing some guys that maybe aren't grabbing that opportunity. And you're also seeing some veterans, I think, who aren't playing as well as you expected. So I think John Tortorella is getting some of those answers, and that's really what this season was about for him from the start and continues to be the case. I think you'd get a better answer, though. I think you guys would agree with this on some of the young guys if they were slotted into a little bit better roles. Right now they're getting force-fed stuff, so maybe they're a little bit overwhelmed. When some of the guys come back, and they will come back, then maybe we can slot some of these players into the roles.
That's the most impressive thing to me about Noah Cates is what he's been thrust into and what he's been asked to do out of necessity. He's not a big guy. He's going up against big centers, and defensively, he's been their best player.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the guys, and Tip is another who I think has really said, hey, I'm going to be part of this as a young player moving forward. Morgan Frost, there's been some signs. I'd like to see more signs. But we can go through all the guys, but this is what it's about. That's what this season's all about, especially for the young guys, but also the veterans. I mean, moves will be made. As a veteran, some guys have no moves and all that, but you can get moved too. Some of the veterans need to pick it up too that are still in the lineup. So it's all auditioning for John Tortorella really at this point and for the organization.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is these are foundational blocks of his standard. And, the leading scorer on the team playing at a point-per-game pace is best start of his career for Kevin Hayes. And he has not been immune. He has been benched in a period. He has been moved to a fourth line. Mind you, this is on a team without 6 of its top 9 forwards. And he's been moved to the wing for Noah Cates.
Both wings.
Yeah. So I look at that and I go, you're not going to point your way out of doing the right things with John Tortorella. And when you're building, a new house, and this is the foundational blocks. The foundational blocks of a basement don't look good when you're building the house. They don't, but eventually you get to the vanities and the bathrooms and all that stuff that does look good, but you have to build it with honesty and a high standard, and I think that we've seen that. I agree with Tim. I think the hard work has been there, 98% of the time, and that's a great thing to have, and we can be satisfied with that, or you can choose to be satisfied with that for now. Eventually, result has to come because that's what pro sports is, but I think, again, to go back to the rational brain, what this team was coming in, what they are with the injuries, and, asking for the team to work hard is not asking for too much from the head coach. And I think it's really clear that nobody is immune to controlling that element of what they bring on an everyday basis as a professional.
And I do want to point out one other thing about a positive this development. The identity we talked about a lot in our last roundtable is still there. Every coach that we talk to before they play the Flyers, this is a hard-working team. They're not going to go easily. And there are some players who've emerged, maybe surprising to some, putting that identity forth. Nick Delorier comes to mind right away. Zach McEwen, certainly. And Nick Seeler, who is somehow or other is heavily plus on this team. So those are 3 guys that never take a shift off, know their role, perform it well, and they are John. If you want to basically put pictures out there of players that are John Tortorella hockey, those 3 all fit that bill. So that's a positive too, if they can continue to build that part of the foundation.
Let's face it, there's so little room for error that when guys have bad habits, they're glaring because they end up in the back of the net. But let me give you a chance to talk about one of the guys he just mentioned. I don't think anybody expected Nick Seeler to be one of their top 6. If you had to say who's been the best defenseman right now, without dips, he'd be in the conversation.
No, he absolutely has. I mean, I remember last year when he fought Jamie Alexiak, and I went, this guy's a flyer. He takes on a guy that's about a foot taller than him and does a great job.
He had
and
a good one with Delorier as well.
Yeah.
He may want to pick his opponents a little better.
Well, you know what? You get into those fights and you got your head down and you go, oh, no.
Yeah, but you got to have guys willing, right? And he's
he's
willing.
And he plays the game hard. He is a flyer. And he is last year, and I think he was a product of what the hockey club was like. It was just a kind of an apathy thing, and he became part of that. Then all of a sudden he's given an opportunity. He's got a good situation. They've given him a little vote of confidence in playing him an awful lot. He'll fight when he has to. And it's interesting. McEwen, Delorier, Seeler, what do they have in common? What have they brought to the table? They brought a toughness that makes everybody feel a lot better about themselves when they come out of that locker room. And it makes us feel good looking going into Tuesday because, hey, could be interesting, could be fun, might bring back some old-time hockey. But when you talk about Seeler, he plays the game right. He can score.
Yeah.
He can carry the puck. First good pass guy. And he's not shy about taking the body. So he's a big surprise and a real good player for us back there in his position.
And quick to point out that those three bring that element where they'll drop the gloves and they hit and all that, but they are not liabilities on the ice this year. They've been strengths on the ice, so that's a positive.
You can always tell who coach has confidence in, right, by who he's got on the ice.
That's
key
right.
moments in the game, and the fact that Zach McEwen's on your power play would be a shock at the start of the year, I think, but he deserves it. You got to reward how good he's been.
I got a kick the other night. He went through the it was Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden you went, "Is that Bobby Orr?" I mean, he was unbelievable.
He got to the net. A 1-on-4, and he got to the net.
Last year we got him here. We thought, okay, all right, fourth line right winger, he'll fight. It'll be great. Now he's a player, and I'm just so excited. He's a good guy. He's big, and he's got a big upside too on top of it.
So if you look around to other teams in the league, this debate is always present. Do you, when you get to a point, I think of the Green Bay football game against the Eagles the other day, that happens in the NFL all the time, where you got a veteran quarterback about the end of his career, you got a kid behind him. When is it time to just turn over the reins? We were in Montreal to play the Canadiens last week, and they've put the kids in, and they're reaping the rewards in some cases and dealing with some of the pain that comes with that. I'm not sure that approach. I don't think the Flyers have guys that are on the cusp right now where you can look to Lehigh and find answers to what they have to deal with right now. Igor Zamula's up, so he's going to be playing soon here this week, I think. I don't know that from a forward standpoint there are any easy answers down there.
There's 3 guys, right?
And none of them are ready.
Yeah, and I talked to Chuck Fletcher on Flyers Daily about that, and they want those guys playing down there in the proper league to get proper ice time and be put into a lot of situations. We're talking about Demwye, Tyson Forster. These are guys that, maybe
Wisdom.
Yeah, maybe you could help a little bit here now. A team that's struggling to score, does Tyson Forster help that? Absolutely. He's got a legit NHL shot at this moment, but you want his complete game. So I think that makes sense for them to be there right now. Now, you may reach a point, we hope we don't, you hope you're getting people back and not losing further. Eventually, you may get to a point where you have no choice, like when they had no choice but to bring Carter Hart up. I think they went 7 goalies deep that year. So, but seeing those guys develop down there, I think, is more important.
You have Artem Anisimov, who is still playing on a PTO down, and the Flyers are at 50 contracts, so they would have to move somebody if they needed to bring up Anisimov. He's a veteran. He's a fourth-line guy. If you were, God forbid, to lose another couple of more centers, then you might not have any choice but to go that route. Short of that, I don't know that you want to put a veteran like that in front of a kid who you're trying to develop.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's more about seeing who's going to be here moving forward. Anisimov might be here a year or 2 moving forward at most, right? So I think you'd want to continue to see some of the youngsters in those spots. And I'm not talking about the youngsters who are with the Phantoms, the youngsters who are still with the Flyers. But I think, Jason, you're talking about if there's more injuries, they might have to come.
Yeah, I mean, you get to a point where, I mean, who else are they going to tap?
Well, the best prospects right now in Lehigh are defensemen, I think, other than the
we
young
have York,
forwards in York and Adder. They're really happy with, number one, York. I'm hearing good things.
the team
And
in
they want to just let him continue to play the minutes and the situations he's playing down there. And the fact is, the Flyers aren't hurting defensively because their top 6, now top 7, have been pretty good.
Yeah, well, I think they need to play
They've been
better.
healthy. Let me put it that way.
Yes. I mean, I think that is an area that they're playing the top 2 so much that they have to figure out a way. And Zamula is going to get a shot, it appears, right now, of finding somebody to take some of those minutes because, Tony DeAngelo can't be playing 27, 28 minutes a game. And Provorov, I think we've kind of seen a little bit over the last couple of years. Then when he's playing a little bit less, he might be a little bit better as well. So, but you can't blame Shaw and Torts when they look down and it's a 1-goal game. Who do you want out there? It's those 2. So you understand why it's happening, but they also, when you look big picture, they probably have to find a way. I think Ristolainen has been a little bit better in recent games. Still got to see more from Travis Sanheim. But I mean, this, like you say, it's been healthy. So why rush the youngsters? From a performance standpoint, I think we need to see more from the defense, though.
I think we got enough young players here right now.
Yeah.
And you still have to win hockey games. And they're trying. They really are. And there are some good players. Like York is playing good. I like Addard a lot, too. These are guys who are going to be the future. But Montreal is a little bit of a different animal right now because they have guys that can score right now. They're skilled players. They can outscore you. I mean, Suzuki and Caulfield are both in the top scoring right now in the league. Right. So they can just basically go out and outscore you. We don't have that luxury here. So I think it would be tough. It's always nice to be able to get a mix of both, to your veterans thing, but this is such a strange situation. I don't know how you handle it. I see your point. We talked about it the other night on the air with Montreal.
Yep.
You're saying, okay, this is the way it's going to do. They got that real young defense, and it's turning out all right for them, but they can outscore you. We don't have that ability right now.
I mean, Ottawa's going with that same approach, and it's not going as well. I mean, they have a ton of young players. I mean, they acquired some veterans, Giroux and DeBrincat, but they're still playing a lot of young players, and they're having some growing pains. So it can go either way.
I guess I bring it up because the question might be, why is York not here if he's playing well? I honestly think it's in his best interest not to be right now. And
Get it right.
And let him develop.
You cannot microwave development. You can microwave food and it tastes like you microwaved it. You don't want to do that with development. You have too much tied up into these guys. They mean too much to you going forward. So, you're in this situation. You want these guys to develop properly so that when they get here, they can be here to stay. Now, York's been here a little bit, had some success, particularly at the end of last year. Probably doesn't mean a ton to Torts because, they're playing out the string at that point. But, let those guys develop properly. What's it going to do for this team this year? We're getting up to this timeline now, too, where, Travis Konechny is going to return within 7 days-ish.
Hopefully.
James Van Riemsdyk has been out. Hopefully Cam Atkinson, we'll see him for the first time this year. Couturier's a ways away, 3-4 months. But then you look at Bobby Brink. He's going to start out with the Phantoms. What does he do when he gets there? So you could get a little bit of optionality at some point here.
And just those three that you mentioned that are hopefully soon coming back, you put those three in the lineup, and then some of the guys who've been getting ice time like Tippett and Cates and stuff, you slot them differently. All of a sudden, your top 6, top 9 is not looking as it's dire. It's the top 9 that you can work with and score some goals.
Key.
And have better power play and all that. So it's not like you're that far away when you get those guys back.
I think it's interesting to watch, too, how Torts coaches different guys differently. He's been at this a while, and he knows that the same approach doesn't work with everybody. He might be on a guy, riding a guy to try to get him to a level that he's uncomfortable with and get him to that next level. But there are other kids that are a little more maybe sensitive and wouldn't respond to that. I think he coaches Travis Sanheim maybe differently than he does somebody else.
That's the case for a modern day coach. In the old days, a coach, everybody got treated the same. He went out, and Freddie was a little ahead of the curve when it came to that. But now they have psychologists tell you, well, this guy needs a little prodding, and this guy doesn't need any prodding, and that type of thing.
What did you need?
What's that?
What did you need?
Maintenance and lots of.
I needed directions.
How to manual.
That's what I needed.
Where is that rational side?
Well, we'll talk about that in our next show.
Okay, it's a whole nother show.
But he understands, and the day that the coach stops riding you is the day to worry because he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I've noticed about Torts, which I'm very impressed with, is his ability to say, "Hey, I was wrong," or "Let me think about this again." Kiefer Bellows is an example. I think he had come to the point after watching Kiefer play 2 or 3 games where it was like, I don't think so. And then he got into games because of injury, and he played a couple of games where he was all right, and all of a sudden you're seeing him on top line. He says, I'm starting to see some
There
things.
was a ticking sound. Tick, he was running out of time.
Yeah, and there are several
just
others.
in time.
Yeah,
He
others,
showed
maybe
me.
the clock isn't quite as short as for Kiefer, but there's other guys on this team where the runway's starting to run a little bit. Those injured guys are coming back. But what I've liked about Torts is like he'll come and he'll talk to us, and he talks to us away from the other media, and he gives us some really blunt opinions on players. But the guy will get in 2 or 3 games. He'll say, hey, you know what? I'm seeing some things. a lot of coaches, this coach, the old school coaches, once you're in their doghouse, you don't usually get out.
No.
With Torts, you can get yourself right out of that, and I'm very impressed with his ability to adjust.
The other thing about Torts is I think we should recognize what a good team he is with his assistant coaches, specifically Brad Shaw, because I think Shaw's the guy that'll tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, you need to back off of this guy a little bit or take a different approach. A coach needs to not only have that guy, but be willing to listen to him.
Well, he's a delegator. I remember when I first interviewed him, we were talking about the power play, and he goes, I'm not going to coach the power play. I bring people in to do that. And so he's gathered what he thinks are the best available to do the special teams, the penalty kill, the defense, the power play. And he's going to let them coach. And I think that's outstanding. It should be a one-man show. Everybody has an opinion to make yourself better. And you have a lot of talent as far as your coach is concerned. So use it, and eventually it'll pay off.
Yeah, I think the game is coached so much now. Like, the power play is its own job, and the decor and penalty kill is its own job. Delegating the goaltending coaching to the goalie coach, how Torts has talked about. And he's got his hands full when it comes to coaching the mind. I mean, not letting this mentality of here we go again come in is a full-time job. I think that's a really difficult task for him. So
He's said a couple of times in interviews, including one on TNT, that I think he got some criticism for, of saying it's a young, dumb league. And what he meant by that is that kids are getting here sometimes sooner without the structure in their game that in your day would have been mandatory to have to play at this level.
It happens so quickly. Everybody gets it used to be that the older guys would get the big contracts, and they were the ones that were sought after. If you look at now, it's all young. You're paying the younger players quicker. They're getting into the lineups quicker, but that doesn't mean they understand the game. Does that mean that they knew what they're doing when they came out of college, or they knew what they're doing coming out of junior? No, they're not getting the tutelage at all. I agree with that. I think it's too much too quick.
flat cap world.
Yeah, it's a world now where everything's happening so fast, but we forgot. I'll give you one. I'll throw it back at you. I was thinking about all these injuries the other day, and I'm a true believer that the players today do not know how to hit and know how to get hit. And I blame the hockey associations for taking hitting out till you're 13, 14 years old. What's the purpose of that? You're going to learn to play hockey. When you go to play football, you'll learn how to tackle. In hockey, all of a sudden, well, you can't hit until you're 14 years old. So now all of a sudden you get to the National Hockey League and guys are putting themselves in a bad spot along the wall, and then the guy's drilling them. Well, there's two combinations there. Don't put yourself in a bad position, and understand the guy's 3 feet away from the boards. They don't know how to hit. And so now that you wonder all about all our injuries. Atkinson, do you remember when he got hit? When he got hurt last year?
I don't.
Okay, Tommy Wilson boarded him on the near boards.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't an illegal hit. It wasn't a board. But Atkinson went in a precarious position and got hurt.
How about Thomas Chabot this year?
Same thing.
I mean, you go skating behind the net knowing that Konechny's coming, and you turn back into Konechny, and boom. And
that's exactly right. To understand, your first thing is to look after yourself. But that rule about not being able to hit, the kids, that's where you learn. Yeah. That's where you learn. And
hitting at Pee Wee, you won't get hurt either, but now they make it so you can start hitting at Bantam where you can get hurt. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Right. You're physically more dangerous.
Yeah, you're more dangerous as you're 14 than you are 12.
When you were a Pee Wee, how many times did you come away?
I was a goalie, so I didn't hit.
He was a goalie.
I understand that. I mean, that's one of his problems. But
one of many.
But when you were a Pee Wee and you came in the locker room after, nobody said, anybody got to see the doctor? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Nobody hits hard enough for it. So why
Nobody's moving
can't
quick
you
enough.
teach them?
That's when you do it. You're I totally agree with you.
You just used the word, though, that this all comes back to, is that Torts is doing more teaching at this level than I can remember a coach ever having to do in the NHL.
And he's the best guy for it. He's been there. He's been around.
Former teacher.
What did he have? His 1400th game the other night. I mean, that's a lot of education. And a lot of coaches would have said, I can't do this anymore. And he's the perfect guy for this, and we just got to stay with it. I mean, look how 2 weeks ago we were all pretty excited. Now we lose Konechny and we lose Lawton and we go into the tank and our goaltending's not as good as it was. And it's still good, don't get me wrong, but it's tough with this hockey club. So we'll see. Are we doing this another 2 weeks?
Yeah.
We'll see how we are
and
then.
the schedule between this roundtable and the next one is not very easy.
No picnic.
You are talking about some of the top teams in the league, so there's quite a challenge ahead.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a reality check. I think we do need to recognize the reality of the situation and maybe adjust our expectations for what constitutes a good season. Is it cut and dry? You have to make the playoffs to have a season where you've taken steps forward? I don't think that's the case.
You got to be. I'm sorry.
No.
You very quickly.
Yeah.
You got to be. You just hit. Like, what do you expect? You have to go in that locker room every day and remember that at one point this team did lose 10 games in a row and made the playoffs, and that's. Please. You've got to look at it like that. You can't go in the locker room and say, "Woe is me! I'm waiting for April to come." You have 20 people in that room representing the logo, and you have to be prepared, and you've got to be able to say, it's going to get better tomorrow. It's going to get better tomorrow. And it's not for lack of work ethic. So I'm on board, and I think this is a good group. I'm on board.
I've asked coaches before, is it easier to coach when you're winning or losing in terms of getting the message across? It's easier when you're winning in general, but in terms of getting messages across, sometimes teams on winning streaks, you get pretty sloppy toward the end of the winning streak, and they're not listening to the coaches anymore because, hey, we're winning. We don't. And John Torts said, it can go either way, but to me, the rest of this year is about, yes, you need to win some, because losing is just it's just tough. The backbiting could start. I haven't seen that yet and all that. So yeah, you've got to win some. But again, I think the rest of this season is really about, as I said earlier, answering questions on these players and continuing to build that standard that Torts talks about, which, as I referred to, I think you're seeing some of that for sure. That has to continue, and we have to keep getting answers on these players. I mean, that's what this year's about. Do you need wins to do that? I think you do, because if you just constantly lose,
becomes accepted.
yeah, everything becomes
Yeah.
kind of negative. Yeah.
I think that one thing I'm seeing quite a bit of is did Torts know what he was getting himself into, and the notion of, well, Torts goes in and has a team fighting for a playoff spot immediately, and he's a guy that gets a lot out of a little and has in his career, but also in year one and everywhere he's been, this is kind of what he's looked at. Come in, find out who's who, what's what, who can I rely on moving forward, and who can I not rely on moving forward? And then you start to go, okay, well, here's the guys I know I can't rely on, so I have to get the people in that fill those holes that can. So I think that he knew exactly what he was getting himself into. Did he know about all these injuries? No, because you can't predict that. But I don't think he's overwhelmed by the situation or going, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm 64 years. I don't think he's feeling that way at all. He's too much of a competitor to just go, okay, this is not for me. I thought I wanted to. No. He not wired that way. This is a huge challenge for him. I think he's been here before, and he's had success going through this. And I think he likes building something from the ground up.
And we go back to
Yeah.
the guys that are being given opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't. Their attitude is, do I want to be part of the solution moving forward, or not really part of anything? And that's what they're trying to answer. The good news is Flyers are going to continue to, we hope, start to get healthy. Travis Konechny's probably close. Cam Atkinson's skating with the team again, so hopefully they start to get some NHL bodies back in here. And the schedule, I think they're through the worst of it, only to say that they've got a homestand coming up here, and hopefully that'll help them get things.
Yeah, travel-wise, the worst of it, but
Yeah.
competition-wise, this is.
Although after the homestand, you have 2 home games the remainder of the year, so
Yeah.
pack your suitcases,
Yeah,
boys.
then the travel comes back. But they get this homestand. I think it's a pretty important one just to get a little practice time in. They've had precious little practice time here the last couple of weeks, so that will help. Tough teams, but bottom line is, as you said, Timmy, I think you're referring to the fact they're going to actually be home for at least a couple weeks here. I think it's time to recharge a little bit, and we'll see if they can.
And we'll see where we are the next time we do one of these with our latest Broadcasters Roundtable. For Steve Coates, Jim Jackson, Jason Martinez, I'm Tim Saunders. Enjoy the games.